Hello, everyone. Here we are back again. Unfortunately, we're missing Taylor this week, but we're really excited for today's episode because we are going to interview Stephen about his businesses. And so today's episode is called Beyond the Bottle, Stories of Passion, Wine, and Connection. And I cannot wait to figure out what the stories of passion are because that'll be really interesting. But before we do that, Amelia,
Yeah.
how
I guess we can jump right in.
jump in and like what cool thing did you do this week?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to a couple cool events last week. I did end up going to FEI, which I always love. It's exciting. There was a good panel on ESG, and it was down at the Boston Harbor Distillery. So fun fact, I had never been there. For some reason, I didn't even know it existed. So it was a really cool experience just seeing that. And I definitely am going to go and explore it a little bit more on my own. It was also nice. I went to the Metro West Life Sciences networking power hour that same morning. That is a group that I had a partnership while I was with Insperity at ABI Labs. They are a part of Metro West Life Sciences Network. So it was really nice just to go out and support the people there. Michelle is one of the people who's been putting on the event. So I wanted to go out and support her. And it's always a great event. You get good conversations, you learn things, and you meet new people as well.
Yeah, and they're a great group of people for sure.
Yes, I love them. There can't be, I don't think there's a nicer group as well. So now that I just kind of took it over about my fun at networking, since we're going to interview Stephen, I'm going to go with Jeff. If Jeff can talk about it. And well, before we get into Stephen, he can talk to us about his networking last week.
Sure. Well, I think I mentioned last week that I was traveling this week doing I did a training on managing up. I think I might have mentioned that, which was really interesting. I don't think I've ever been trained on managing up before. And so it's cool to actually do it. And I really enjoyed it. But, one of the cool things was I got to meet up with this woman who I worked with probably 10 to 15 years ago. Hadn't seen her in a very long time. And she was the person that actually connected me with the company I was doing some work for. But we had coffee in the morning beforehand and just had a great conversation about, some opportunities that she saw for some of the work that I'm doing, whether it's on the middle management stuff or on the on the sort of twinning edge business development support side of things. So that was super fun. So that was probably my main networking event last week, but really enjoyed it. So I guess I'll pass it to Stephen before we start, peppering you with interview questions and so forth. What cool thing did you do last week? I know you did probably 7. So what
yeah, I'll hit on the
coolest. What did you not do last week?
Well, I did not do FEI because I had another one that I couldn't go to FEI. So no, we're not going to go there. That's dangerous. But no, actually last week was pretty interesting. There was a private directors association at Bentley. And that was focused on B Corps, which I don't know if either of you have ever heard of those. Yeah. I have not before that, or maybe I've heard of them, but I've never really gotten into any sort of detail. So that was a pretty fascinating panel, kind of talking through and just really something to think about for the future. Then I also had another one with basically a nice dinner at Grill 23 with SVB. And definitely shout out to Grill 23. Absolutely fantastic. That was my first time there. Highly recommend.
Oh, awesome.
For sure. So if Amelia Supporting Strategies is doing a fun dinner event, let's do it there.
It is one of my favorites. It's a good place.
Super impressed. Then I had an event, basically a event for the Good Shepherd, which is a not-for-profit. They basically do hospice care in the Newton and greater, really Massachusetts area, but especially greater Boston. Really, really great organization. That was awesome. Actually won JetBlue tickets for 2 anywhere in the U.S. So that was, in addition to making a donation, there's also a pretty cool, part of that too on the raffle side. Had my homecoming for Western New England College, or I guess now University in Springfield. So it was our 20 year, which means that I'm getting older for sure. But a lot of fun there. Made some reconnections, which is very cool. And then last, I think probably one of the most interesting ones was for Sunday. For those of you, I know, Jeff, you're in Newton, probably aware of the Patty's Road Race. But basically that benefits Athletes Unlimited. There were literally thousands of people there. And so really good event. I had a booth. I had actually also donated a session there for the wine blending.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I had a booth, met a ton of people, some really cool people next to me from Montessori. I'll be doing wine tasting there as a result of that. But yeah, and actually it turns out that it was a firefighter who also runs the Newton Childhood Firefighters Foundation, or Children's Firefighters Foundation. And that was the person who won the blending session that I donated. So that could be interesting if I end up doing that in the fire station. That'll be a first. Right? I guess that brings my inner 6-year-old fascinated with fire stations, fire trucks, that sort of thing out again. So it's been pretty busy.
Stephen just puts us to shame with networking. I cannot keep up with that. It's amazing.
You're everywhere. I don't usually do the Sunday things, so that was a lot.
It is a little intimidating, but it's impressive.
I love it. I respect, like, I think I go out a lot, like 2 or 3 nights networking, and I'm always like, wow, I'm exhausted. So anyone who does it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a week, I'm blown away by how amazing they are at it.
Or nuts.
Yeah, I don't think so. You're just super social, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
I just, for me, it's like the one-on-one stuff is like, I end up a lot of those in a week, but I don't know that the events, that's sort of a new thing for me, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that is often
feel like now I need to totally up my game to just keep
just go for 1 week and then just load it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Just pick right. Well, otherwise what happens is other stuff ends up loading up your week. So you gotta sort of balance.
Yeah. Like I make it with my calendars. What I do is like I look 2 weeks out and I'll look and be like, oh wow, I only have 1 event or I don't have an event. That's weird. So I'll actually go and start looking for events to put on my calendar that I can attend. And that's kind of how I manage it.
I feel like I need to start shadowing each of you. Like I'm just gonna do a week where I just go follow you to all the events you go to. I don't know. It might be like creepy.
Podcast is for Jeff. It's that we can all learn. But I don't want to take too much time away from talking about Stephen. I personally am really excited to interview you because I feel like I've met you when you were CPA, business development by trade. You were kind of dabbling in the wine space and then you went full blown wine. And to me, I think it's a really inspiring story just because to me, I see somebody who has a passion and followed it. But I'd love to kind of hear from you, Stephen, like how you got here.
Yeah, I think, well, it's interesting. I guess when I started wine probably goes back to about 2004 when I started at KPMG. And so basically at that point in time, the majority of the senior management team was very much into wine and very good wine. Now, of course, I'm 21. I'm just out of college, starting a new job, salary level very different than those that I was working with at those levels. And so we started having bottles like, cake bread and Camus and, Duckhorn and all those sort of fun things that, even back then mostly had like 3-figure, low 3 figures, but, $100 bottles, which would not have been the ones necessarily that I was buying. So very early on, kind of got a good taste for interesting / really good wines. And so, as I kind of grew with the wines, also had a number of different wine and food societies that I started getting involved with, right? So more on the personal, fun, that sort of side. But then there's also opportunities to intersect that with professional, right? Because you inevitably meet people, they're interested in wine, they're interested in food. So kind of marrying those two together evolved a bit as well. And then fast forward to last December. And last December, I was invited to a wine tasting. And I've done a ton of wine tastings at the wineries or at people's homes, that sort of thing, you name it, or restaurants when they're putting on a winemaker's dinner. But this was one where it was at somebody's house. It was actually somebody from the 2 of the organizations I'm in, so the International Wine and Food Society and the Chaîne des Rôtisseurs. And basically, again, she was involved in both. She put the wine tasting on. And it was one of those things where I've been to wine tastings before that were in people's homes. And I won't mention names, but there's other companies out there. I know this one actually that I'm referring to has gone defunct subsequently. But it was the one that was put on by a family member. And I went there. I said, of course, wine tasting, close family member. I'm of course going to go to it. And, trying the wines, and they were crap, like really, really bad. So obviously, being the good family member, I still bought some. But those ended up being like cooking wine type of wines, right?
Yeah.
And so I went here kind of with low expectations. I'm like, is this going to be another one of the same things? But of course, it's a friend. I'll support her. So went, and then all of a sudden, had the initial sparkling wine, which turned out to be what's called the JCB number 69, which is really related to the year of his birth, as well as the first person on the moon. Nothing else, of course.
And it's fantastic.
Yep, and it's fantastic. Yes, you've had it before. And it is fantastic. So I'm not normally a sparkling rosé type person, but this one is it's really, really good. So that was my first introduction to the Boisset wines, and then subsequently had, of course, that night 5, 6, maybe even more other examples, and I'm like, this is actually really good. So I had a conversation and her name is Eileen. Had a conversation with Eileen. Tell me more about what you do. And so again, that was December of last year. I had signed up that night to also sell and kind of be able to sell for that group. But there's some trepidation there. I'm like, okay, well, I've really only had 6, 7 wines, whatever it is, right? Am I really that comfortable to, essentially represent a brand that, I haven't had enough of yet? So fast forward a few months, it was, February, March of this year, and went out to Napa, met up with, among many other people, others who are doing a similar thing as a independent ambassador, as well as John Charles Boisset, the founder and owner. And so meeting up with him, had some really good conversations, a lot of inspiration, definitely passion. Like, he's one of the most passionate people I've ever met in my life. And so in going through that, I probably end up having 30, 40, maybe more wines over the weekend from the Boisset portfolio, right? And going through that, visiting a number of the wineries such as, Buena Vista, Deloche, Elizabeth Spencer, and others. After all of that, I'm like, wow, I can definitely represent this brand. And I have no issue standing behind and saying, these are all wines that I would drink myself. So that's really what it kind of came down to. And from there, yes, I was still with, my previous company. I was probably putting in 16-hour days. And again, that's kind of who I am anyways. And I count networking as part of those days, right? That is part of the job.
You should, yeah.
And so in those cases, again, the networking I was doing really was focused on what are the right clients, what's the right portfolio for Monomoy. Subsequent to doing this full time, my networking has very much shifted, or not very much, but has taken a shift to others that make more sense based on what I'm doing now. But if I look back there, a lot of the clientele is clientele in common, right? So executives, board members, CFOs, controllers, all those folks who, in addition, many of them are also wine drinkers, right? And so there's a natural connection. In fact, there are opportunities that, by virtue of people that I've met on the wine side, that were referring me into things that would make sense on the financial front, and really vice versa. And so it became kind of an interesting, I did have to make a decision as far as what makes sense. Do I stay on that? But I realized I was not going to be able to do both, and definitely not be able to do both and really do the wine thing effectively. And so, end of June, I made the transition, fully focused on wine, and that's where I am right now.
That's so exciting.
So pretty crazy.
I know we talked about new beginnings last week for me, but I feel like this is such a new beginning for you. Like, you're really becoming an entrepreneur. I know you're kind of doing some fractional finance work on the side, but I know that that's not your main focus. So I won't ask too much about that, because I think the wine stuff for you is a little bit more interesting as well.
Well, I'll come back to that, because connecting, basically the networking and that, there's been some really interesting things there as well. So I'll jump into that in a little bit. But
well, actually, that was it's a good transition into, and I'm actually interested to understand, Amelia, how you and Stephen met. But how Stephen and I met was, we were chatting at a Charles River Chamber of Commerce event, and Stephen mentioned the wine thing, and I was like, wow, that is such a cool networking tool. And so that's how we ended up setting up. We had coffee at Stephen's. Is it your favorite restaurant? I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely. I would say that probably is. I have to be careful, because I'm friends with a lot of restaurant owners in Newton.
They're all your favorite.
However, I guess it's like trying to pick your favorite child type of thing, right? So Moldova restaurant definitely is right at the top of that list.
So we had coffee at their cafe, and we're just having this interesting conversation about, kind of like, podcasts and various other things. And so that the podcast came out of that. But I just, when you were talking, I don't know if you remember this part of the conversation, but I'm like, we were talking about, what you might write articles or whatever. And I was like, you should write articles about networking, because that is really where the wine will come, right?
Yep.
People want the wine with the networking. And I think it's just a fascinating tool to, and the connection between how do you create networking events and how do you get, I don't know, we were talking about like a guy who's a sales guy at a moving company. How do you get a bunch of realtors to come to an event with a moving company? Well, maybe you have a wine tasting, right? And so I don't know. I just think you've got this huge, your networking and your wine are just, I think they just come together. So.
Well, now I get in trouble sometimes if I'm drinking a beer or water or anything other than wine at a networking event.
Your personal brand is now, you can't.
And you think I'm kidding, but and of course some of the networking events that I go to, depending on where they are, the wine selection is not exactly what I would jump to. I'm not that crazy about it as far as like super ridiculous, but some of the places it's just a no, right? When it's red or white, that's probably not going to be a fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. People ask me why I drink water at those events.
It often happens, yes.
Like, I think water's better than whatever this is going to be out.
Well, but that just means there's a need out there for better wine at networking events.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
I would agree.
Draw, right? I mean, there's so many groups that you could pull in.
Totally.
A wine tasting event, and then how do you then leverage that for somebody who's trying to get in front of a group of people? I think it's really fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to your point, Stephen, like I have gotten for like Christmas presents and stuff, like a box of wine from one of those like subscriptions. So to be honest, when I met you, I was like, oh, cool, another wine subscription, but I'll try it. Like this guy seems nice and knows what he's like. He's telling me how he went out to Napa. Like he has to at least have some idea. And the first bottle of red I opened, it's like now one of my new favorite bottles. It was
that's right. It was a Buena Vista Zinfandel, if I recall.
Yes. And then, we did our wine blending event, which was so educational for me because I told you I hated cabs, and turns out I actually like cab. I just don't like when cab has a little bit of Merlot in it.
Oh.
Yep.
And you would have laughed. I was at a restaurant and I almost asked if the cab had some Merlot in it, and I refrained. I was like, I don't want to be judged by this person right now.
Well, I think that was definitely the key takeaway for a number of people at that event, right? That oftentimes the label will say Cabernet Sauvignon, and the average person is going to say, okay, well that's what it says, that's what it has to be, right? Yeah. But in reality, at least in the US, if it says that, it has to be at least 75%. So basically that 25% can be anything else. And oftentimes it is. It's a mix of Merlot, it's a mix of, Cab Franc or other things that get into your more traditional, Bordeaux style blend. And so that was definitely like a lot of lights went on, and they continue to do that. Really at the blending session, that is 8, 9 out of 10 times. That's the biggest, of course, the fun and joie de vivre and those other things. But that really is one of the biggest takeaways from those events, which is cool.
Yeah, I loved it. I had a question. Sorry, Jeff. I was going to say, because I know we talked how your networking has changed a little bit, but I'd love for you to kind of go into a little bit more detail, because obviously when you're working for a financial advisory firm from a CPA perspective, the people you're networking with, they're going to be kind of different, but not really. I guess it kind of depends, but there's definitely going to be a shift in kind of the focus of where you're networking. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that and kind of the trials and errors.
Yeah, I think so. If I think about what I was focused on at Monomoy in the past, right? Which again, a great firm, fantastic leadership, and what I was focused on there really was more access to the CFO suite, right? Yeah. So it would be definitely PDA or Private Directors Association, your FEI, financial executives, and again, I'm still heavily focused on those as well. What I've done is, if anything, probably picked up more. And so in the past, like, the Chamber of Commerce, I went to some of the events, and it's absolutely fantastic. But, based on the size of the businesses and a lot of the events, as far as who actually went to some of those, it wasn't necessarily the exact fit in all cases for Monomoy. And again, I'm not disparaging the Chamber by any means. They've been fantastic. But, if you're looking for companies that are, 20, 30, 40 people, and actually to have the management of those there that are kind of the right fit industry wise and everything else, that wasn't always the case. And in certain events it was, but in others it was not. If I now think about, who are parts of my target, it's definitely business owners, right? It's business owners and small businesses. Some of my best customers are small businesses that have 1 or 2 employees, but they have a ton of customers. They want to do corporate gifting. They want to do a custom label, etched bottles, all that sort of thing. And those are like perfect customers for me now. So the focus has twisted a little bit. Again, a lot of the executives, they still want to do corporate events. I can speak the language, obviously, of accounting firms very well. And so, I had one event, like I think I said in the past, with Eisner Amper, and it was basically a 30-ish person blending session with their team. And, obviously, as I'm going through, I'm also talking a little bit the language of business where prompted, those sort of things. And I expect to get more and more cases like that, where as I'm going to different events, I'm, talking about some of the things that I've done in the past. And if let's say I go to an event for an accounting firm now, right, and they're trying to develop business with PEs, VCs, executives, that sort of thing, I can talk about wine, but I can also obviously talk the language of the business. And I'm looking forward to, as the IPO market twists or shifts, hopefully, and comes back, I'm looking forward to getting involved in more of those events. So I'm still keeping kind of both sides relevant.
That's so awesome. Have you found, sorry, Jeff, do you have a question? I feel like I'm just like hot taking this.
Please go ahead. I'll jump in a second.
Okay. What was my question? I was curious, are you seeing repeat clients there? Are there people who, you might be helping out on the financial side that now they're becoming wine clients, or vice versa?
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And so if I think through like the evolution of some of these, there's people that I was working with, going back to my KPMG days even, right? Yeah. And, 100%. And they're like, that's so cool. They love what I'm doing. It's obviously something very different. They're in some cases shocked. But yeah, awesome. it's definitely doing that. Then if I think through, some of the smaller companies that I've supported in the past, they're very intrigued with the different offerings. And, the fact that essentially we do the legwork for them. Think about corporate swag. A lot of times in the past, somebody would order it gets shipped into the office, and now somebody has to deal with actually delivering it. Right now, the wine side of the house, I've actually have another one that just signed on today, I think. But a couple of really good customers in the last week. And what they're doing is they're sending out, individual bottles of wine, or in some cases more than one, but basically able to say, hey, I want 8 bottles of this to go here, and 2 here, and 1 to these 20, 30 people. And literally our logistics office, and a shout out to Christy out there, she's awesome, as is the rest of the team. But basically the logistics office out there just does a killer job, right? And so they're gonna, if you want gift boxes, can do that. If you just want to send it regularly. But for one client, they're probably gonna end up doing, 20 or 30 packages. For the one that came on today, it could be 60 or 70, right? But that's all handled. And then, if somebody wants to do handwritten cards, throw them in the box, I can literally get those shipped out there, added to the box, and it's just super easy.
You can even do that. That's so cool.
There's a lot of
You're selling to Amelia as we go.
There you go.
I've been sold, Jeff. I have been sold.
and the wine is really good too, right?
Yes, I just think it's such a great business concept, and I just feel like you do such a good job with it. As somebody who has had you come and host a wine blending session, to the education you get, to the actual product, learning even the ins and outs from a corporate side, I get even I'm like, oh wow, what don't you do from a wine perspective?
Well, I think that's really another interesting aspect, Stephen. It's not just that you can handle all that stuff, but that you are essentially creating a sort of plug and play event. And people are not just looking. I mean, yes, they want the wine and whatever, but to be able to create an event, I think that there's a lot of stuff out there that small business folks should be doing from a networking business development perspective that they are not doing, not because they don't think it's important, but because it's just too much work. And then they don't do it because it feels like too much work. And then they sort of justify it to themselves. Well, it doesn't really do anything, or we did that once and it didn't really work, or whatever it is. The same thing happens, by the way, with the marketing stuff and whatever. They're all like, yeah, that never works, whatever. It's really like it takes some time. You need to put some effort into it. There's an investment in getting it right. And so I think the more you can create something that is plug and play for people, the more they're like, wow, okay, yeah, I can do a wine tasting event and all I have to do is show up. Is pretty awesome. And it's great for you, but it's also great for them, right? It's actually solving, that goes back to the whole point of like, you're solving a networking problem as well as a wine problem.
Yeah.
Really,
I think, you hit it right on the head, Jeff. It's really cool how you've brought together your passion for wine, but also your business savvy, as well as your ability to network. And you're kind of creating this like really cool customized offering to, individuals if they just need like even on a personal side. I like getting the wine because like I'm not a huge wine drinker if I'm just at home by myself, but I like having nice bottles of wine that I can go to the store. And I know that I'm not just going to the wine store being like, this is $40. I'm assuming it's good, and walking out, because this is literally how I used to choose wine is, it's like $40 and the label's pretty. I guess it'll be good. But instead it's handpicked wine from Steven, and I know whatever I give someone, it is going to be fantastic.
No, and I appreciate that. No, it's actually funny. So what you need to do is find a way to be one of the speakers for FEI, because, and then shout out definitely to Ali and Priya there. But one of the things that I've done is custom label bottles for them that they'll be giving out to the speakers. And Ali was kind of saying the same thing. She's like, yeah, I'll go. And obviously she wants to get something meaningful. And, obviously wine is a great gift. But now to actually have it with the logo, and it's a really cool saying, which you'll see in a future event, I'm sure. But really that just makes it next level. I was actually at a dinner yesterday after the Patty's Road Race. And basically at the dinner, one of the guys who is one of my really good customers, what he does is finances basically private jets and aircraft. And so he and I designed a label together, some really cool pictures with planes, that sort of thing. And as somebody finances an aircraft, he'll be giving them one of the custom labels. And again, it came out really good. I think it's one of the best designs thus far. And so I was asking him about that, and he's like, oh my God, they absolutely loved it. Right. And so again, for $50, whatever it is, $70 a person, and there's ones that are less, there's ones that are higher. But to do that and to get that kind of effect, it's so impactful. And on a per customer, and more importantly, hopefully getting the repeat business, it's a no-brainer.
I love this all. And I'm sorry, I know we're past our 25 minutes, we're at like 30 minutes now. So I guess to wrap up, do you want to just give us what's the event you're most excited about this week?
Well, one thing that I want to say really quickly, and this is worth checking out. So definitely look on my LinkedIn. But I think what's really exciting for the Boisset collection overall is John Charles Boisset basically just got, I guess you could probably call it like the Emmys of wine, that sort of thing, right? So basically he got the Wine Star Award from Wine Enthusiast. So he is the 2024 Wine Star Award winner of the year, which is just really huge, right?
Actually.
Yeah, that got a lot of, it's been massively publicized, that sort of thing, because it's a huge deal, right? And so, and again, that's definitely, and there's a lot of us, and so I had actually texted him, and he said, it's really everybody who's a part of that, and that's how he is, right? I think his quote that I really liked, and I'll leave it with this, is that, for him, he basically said, my goal in everything I do is bring people together to share. And so that really is kind of, if you think about networking, everything we do, add the wine fact, that really is something that resonates with me. And that's who he embodies.
And I think that speaks very highly of him as I don't know if servant leadership is the right word here, but that's the word that comes to mind, or at least the phrase that comes to mind, that he really just wants to be out there doing good and bringing people together. And how could you not support it?
Right.
And I will say there, if anybody ever has the opportunity to do one of the Boisset events, so whether it's like Raymond or Buena Vista or whatever it is, like those are just like incredible, incredibly orchestrated, and it's just next level. So highly recommend it. Let me know. I can obviously, I know a guy. So
I got a wine guy now.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, So cool to have a wine guy.
You know, like, I'll just call my wine guy.
Yeah. You need an event? I got an event. Well, so shall we do a quick lightning round, 20 seconds or less? Amelia, any cool things you're going to do this week?
I might be stealing it from you two guys, but I'm so excited that we're having dinner. So for the people who are not on this podcast, it's going to be the first time we're all getting together in person. So I'm really excited. And Steven's obviously bringing the wine and picking the menu. So we know it's going to be fantastic. That's definitely going to be one of the highlights of my week.
Awesome. And for me, absolutely, that will be the highlight of the week. I'm also excited. There's an event through the Charles River Chamber called Authors and Innovators. So I'm going to go to that. And hopefully I make some connections there, regarding my book and so forth. So I'm excited to do that. And Stephen, what's one thing that you're going to do this week? I know you've got 7, but.
So the good thing is that you've already knocked on 2 of them. Yes, of course, I'm looking forward to the dinner on Wednesday. That's going to be amazing. Lennox Sophia, I believe it's the only BYOB restaurant in Boston. I've eaten there a number of times before, but they are having their duck press, which really is next level. So basically, as I said to this group, if you don't like duck, then I will end up going myself at another point in time because I've got to try that. So I'm happy everybody said yes. But I already have some good ideas. I've reached out to the restaurant. I have their list of their list of food. So I've already started pairing the wines to that. So it's going to be amazing. But then beyond that, of course, well, that's my job.
So cool.
But beyond that, yes, Jeff, I will be going to the event on Friday as well in the morning. I also have a gala event in New York City tomorrow, which is for Room to Grow, which is just a great, absolutely amazing not-for-profit. And then have a dinner on Thursday night for Insperity. So looking forward to that as well. And that's near and dear to you, Amelia.
I'll have to connect with you after to see who it's with. I think I know, but
you know. But yeah, so it's really going to be another fun night. And actually tonight I'm in Exeter, New Hampshire. I don't even know if I pronounced that correctly. But I'm here for a networking event, which is via Alignable, which is kind of a really interesting site for smaller businesses, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. And I think before we jump off, I think I'd be remiss not to throw in a quick plug, obviously, for corporate gifting, right?
Yes.
How do
we contact you? Give us the lowdown.
So very easy. Stephen with a PH, or as I tell people, the proper spelling, and somebody agreed with me last night, so I was happy about that. But Stephen with a PH at stephenuncorked.wine. So UNCORKED.wine, not .com, .wine. So that's the easiest way. I'm actually working through a website and that kind of fun stuff right now. But a couple things to think through if you want to do like a year-end holiday party for a company. I will be happy to be the SOM for that. Those are fun things. I'm working on doing that. In addition, any sort of wine tastings, if you want to do a wine blending for a team, I'm starting to book up. Like it's kind of crazy. I actually have like an event in Pennsylvania this weekend. So things are actually expanding pretty quick. But then, others, and Amelia, you're obviously familiar with Wine Society, right? What other people are doing is literally just gifting that. So everybody gets like a fun little treat 4 times a year instead of just once. And so those make a really, really good gift. The other thing that we have, and it doesn't matter if you're Christian, Catholic, whatever or not, but we also have a wine advent calendar. And that is basically buy it now. It will ship out in November, so you have it for December. So then you basically have a nice glass of wine every day for December. You can share it with your friends and family.
Bottles or they...
Yes, it's not. Yes, it's not.
Okay, I was gonna say like a bottle a day for a month.
It's a little bottle. It's a baby bottle.
Okay.
Some people are familiar with the Costco one. This is really the Costco one on steroids. It's really, really good wine. But yeah, any sort of custom label, corporate gifting, we have a Build-A-Box, etched wines, etc. You name it. Pretty much if it's wine-related wine experience, I can get it set up.
Awesome.
I love it. Thank you so much, Steven.
Super cool. So awesome to hear. And I guess we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah. See everyone next week for Taylor. I'm excited to interview her next too.
Yes. Well, yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Take care. All right.
All right. Bye, guys.
Take care, everybody.